but.
All right. So I am here with Miss Laura Eisenhower. She's a global alchemist, researcher, medical intuitive astrologer. She's an internationally acclaimed speaker, expert in exopolitics, and works tirelessly for the collective's highest good. Thank you, Laura, for being here on my channel, chatting with me today. I so appreciate your work and your energy, and I know you're a busy, busy lady, so I am honored that you're here with me.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so just to kind of start off our chat today, so we're living out some intense timelines for sure. So what are some of your daily practices that keep your vibe high? And when you do tend to drop in frequency, how do you work through those shadows and triggers? How do those practices differ?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't say I'm the most disciplined person, but I just try and be as real with myself as possible and just process through the emotions. I don't like to bury stuff. I don't like to just, I don't know, act like I'm not hurting if I am hurting. And having outlets as far as like one's creative expression through like writing and art and other things like that are really important. So I try and create time for that. And what I'm going to be doing more of is working closely with the earth, with animals, and just herbs and flowers and just anything, just, you know, to keep that connection with the earth going, because the matrix wants to take us in a reversal. It wants to take us in the opposite direction that the energies of nature and this planetary consciousness are seeking to take us. And same with universal forces that are always seeking to help us and upgrade us. So it's always important to stay in alignment with that, to not overwhelm oneself with all the crazy news out there, but to also be aware. So I try and, you know, keep up with it, but not overwhelm myself too much. And just, yeah, really tune into myself and like, what do I need right now on a moment to moment basis? What is the best thing that I could be doing? And sometimes I have to admit, certain old vices have come back that I'm, you know, keeping at bay. But, you know, just sort of like honoring the medicine in all things, right? Mm-hmm. And I work with herbs and supplements. I mean, my whole bathroom's like an apothecary. I have so many different herbs. So just a lot of things to keep, you know, the brain in balance, you know, things to help like keep levels of GABA and serotonin up, and just all the things that help one to maintain, you know, a steady brain chemistry. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be positive. Sometimes the positive does mean that we're going to, you know, bring up stuff, release stuff, maybe cry and get angry. But, you know, just making sure I'm doing all I can to stay balanced, because I'm very empathic, and, you know, it's really hard not to feel everything. And there's a lot of feelings of, you know, grief and kind of like being in a mourning process and, you know, disappointments, and try to really divert humanity or get the message out and warn people for years. And even though this was inevitable that they were going to do this kind of rollout, it's scary to see how many friends and family, you know, didn't kind of heed the warning. Doesn't mean that I feel it's all doom and gloom. I feel there is an override frequency, and there's something going on that isn't fully understood by people when it comes to the anchoring of the mother arc energies and the 13th sign of Fiacus, and what the Venus transits have brought about as far as corrections of what one might call, you know, this mark of the, you know what, I don't want to, you know, get too much into it. But so on a daily level, I just, you know, tune into myself, and I am as transparent as possible with friends and family, you know, the ones that I live with that are pretty much on the same page as me. I like to make sure that my creative energy is engaged in things that are positive, projects and different ideas and visions as far as like, you know, land and what we can do as a family, but then online projects, and I still do presentations. So yeah, between herbs and supplements and just trying to breathe deeply and keep myself in check and be as honest with my emotions and what's going on as possible, so that nothing gets internalized or locked into, you know, myself. Yeah, it's just kind of a moment to moment thing. It's just trying to make the right choices in the face of any sort of stress and anxiety. You know, what can I do that is better, like a better medicine than maybe something that is a form of escapism. So, and it's just that daily sort of mindfulness that I, you know, work on. And yeah, exercise is really important. I need to get more of that. And just finding the laughter and seeing the larger picture. You know, I mean, a lot of it's not funny at all, but I mean, parts of it, one has to kind of find a lightness or levity and humor towards. But yeah, seeing and feeling into the big picture, it's like we're infinite beings. This is a crazy part of our human experience. And, you know, people are making choices about what direction they're going to go. But I do have full and total trust that nature is encoded with, you know, ascension energies, meaning, you know, things that will help us to advance ourselves and thrive and work more closely with what's organic and what's connected with our higher gifts and abilities versus the matrix system based in reversals and a reward system that literally wants you to compromise yourself and then be rewarded for it, and just the mind trickery of it all. I just, you know, want to be a resource as much as possible and maybe do some tours, and I certainly don't want to fly again. So there's certain boundaries I'm also putting in place in these times as far as my daily thing is,
Right.
you know, where does one have to draw the line?
Yeah, and I've noticed how many different shows you've been on, and that's so great. Like you said, getting that information out there and connecting with different people. I know for me, you know, when everything kind of seemed to go askew, so to speak, it was, you know, I definitely fell into the dissociation and the escapism, and it was like, I'm just not going to think about any of this anymore. But I think I've kind of gotten past that, and I see the importance of connecting with like-minded folks again and kind of feeling grounded back into this topsy-turviness of everything.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I felt like I had to just really just get a lot of rest and sort of like step back a little bit and sort of be prepared for this next level of challenge that we're dealing with on a humanity level. And I just felt kind of like I just really needed to, yeah, not do as much, even though I was still doing, you know, quite a bit. It was like, I need to rest up. I need to process through. I need to face the difficult emotions and kind of like get to the next phase of like personal, you know, strength to be able to face what we're in for, which is, it's going to be pretty rough what we're going to be witnessing.
Right. So kind of stepping back, I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but stepping back a few months here, what was the integration process for you after, we'll start with the election results. So like, how did that look for you? Was it just, I mean, I know for me, it was, like I said, it was very, well, I'll say this. I never, you know, what I was seeing, you know, people would ask me, what do you see happening? And what I always saw was not what people thought was going to happen. So I always had this idea of like, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And yeah, so if you could like walk me through what your integration process was like.
Yeah. Well, starting from the time that the news of the virus came out and just how that changed the administration and all the different things that were, you know, taking place as far as the way doctors and experts were coming forward, or he was describing like, oh, I tested positive and this is what I ended up doing, and all the ridicule and this and that. I mean, obviously there's been a huge attempt to make anything he, you know, does, you know, sort of look bad, and the media paints him in a very, you know, negative picture. So many have really felt that he's here to drain the swamp and he's not part of the cabal. And, you know, so around election time, it just seemed like not just left versus right, but, you know, deep state versus an individual and a movement that is all about our rights and freedoms, and not so much about it being all about him or the conspiracy stuff, which some people assume. It has to do with preserving our basic rights for a lot of people. People that normally wouldn't be political or even vote got on board because they saw what was at stake. So the election and elections in the previous years, and just in many different circumstances that have been rigged or not monitored in a way that ensures that it's an honest election. I mean, this was like a major obvious one. So it seems so obvious that I kind of thought that it wouldn't be that difficult to maybe begin to turn it around, but it is slowly but surely being turned around. But when you look at how shut down the court hearings were in order to bring the proof forward, you know, the people that are listening to the news are like, well, see, he didn't have any evidence, or they didn't have any evidence. So, you know, the amount of people that like can't see the obvious, I think is very, very shocking. And that it's so difficult to stand up and prove something, because if something is real and true, what do you have to hide? And why so much attack? Why so much censorship? Why so much almost like witch hunting connected to those that support our freedoms, lumping it into some sort of cult or some sort of white supremacy thing? I mean, the media and the psychological operations and how successful it's been is mind-blowing, because when you really get to know or see the true spirit and nature of those that have supported this, it's not what, people think who have bought into the manipulations through the media. And it's like, it's hard to say anything positive without being lumped into a category of a Trumper or, the letter in the alphabet. And it's very sad, because the conquer and divide and the inability for us to all like see what the priorities are, to be responsible to, what it means to really be a person in this world, of integrity, of guardianship to future generations. I mean, how can we blow off and put under the carpet things like child trafficking and pedophilia? How can that just be mocked as a conspiracy when real victims and whistleblowers have come forward? There's no excuse for it. And anybody that supports that or jumps on the bandwagon of the conquer and divide and the ridicule, without really understanding that most people are fighting for the children and fighting for things that need to be addressed as a major, major priority on the planet right now, have absolutely missed the mark. So the election, okay, we see this theater with the B guy and just all these sort of anomalies and all these, different things that just, it's like, okay, is this a temporary sort of theater because humanity's not quite ready to, I mean, I don't like to make excuses and this and that. Like, I'm all about action. I don't like to placate. I don't think saying, oh, humanity's not ready, this is why this is being allowed, or this is just a part of the chess move, that gets really old. It's like, if you're in a leadership position, you have to be standing for truth. And so there's been some disappointments since the election in terms of, the jab and maybe not really warning, but there might be deeper reasons. Maybe not all that information was there. And there's all sorts of compartmentalization and ways to dupe well-intentioned leaders. Eisenhower went through that. So anyway, I feel like things are going to get back on track and back on board with the whole Maricopa County thing in Arizona. There's some real positive developments there. And that the spirit of truth and the love of this country and humanity and wanting, the world to thrive and us all to come together in greater unity, consciousness, and camaraderie is the greater force right now. And it's an unstoppable force. So nothing's really going to take it down, but we're going to see a lot of casualties connected to these dark agendas that they've been very successful in rolling out and convincing people it's a good idea. And that's the shocking part, that so many people don't question it and they don't see the anomalies, the inconsistencies, the hypocrisies. And it just seems so obvious that it comes down to common sense, not like, whether you're red pilled or not. It's like, one shouldn't even have to go down a rabbit hole to just see the madness. And also, like Trump or not, the spirit of the patriots and the kind of energy that you see at rallies, the kind of energy you see when people are walking together, in the spirit of, love and protecting this country from communist invasion, socialism, globalism, and really standing for like honesty in an honest election, regardless of the outcome, just the simple principles of like, honesty. How can one look at that and condemn it? I mean, or call it racist when you got so many people that, are of diverse ethnicities that are like, this is insane. These funded movements that are violent and looting, are putting so much attention on trying to impeach a president that's not even president anymore because there was a small group that became violent. I mean, so the inconsistencies and the hypocrisies, and it's like, you can't even say anything. So I'm even, it's like we have to censor ourselves. If I sound supportive of Trump, I'm going to be harassed or, deplatformed. It's not about the guy. It's about the spirit of the patriots. It's about what's at stake. It's about protecting our children, and it's about protecting this country. Maybe that's not the case for other people, but that is what it is for me and many people I know.
Right. Same. Well, and that's what I was kind of running into. I did an interview with this group that I used to kind of communicate with a few months before the election. And these people were so pro-Trump, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it reminded me of something that Corey Good used to say, that, you know, the higher dimensional beings, the interdimensional beings, they typically would not talk to humans because humans have a tendency to give their power away and, you know, put all of their, like, oh, this guy will take care of it for us kind of thing. You know, we don't have to work anymore. We don't have to protest. We don't have to make ourselves sovereign. We can just put it all on this guy. And so I feel like, you know, maybe this was all kind of in alignment as another test to humanity, to be like, it's not this guy. It's like you said, it's the movement. It's the energy behind it. And we don't need a figurehead. We just need the collective to stand up and be more empowered. And
Exactly. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it never works to put it on a person, and it shouldn't ever be on, you know, somebody's shoulders like that. And that's why the government structure doesn't really, you know, work. People have to step up and take on their leadership role in whatever way they might feel called to. And leadership roles don't always look the same. Some might be a little bit more behind the scenes. Some might be very, you know, much in the public eye. Some might be international. Some might be local. It doesn't matter. You know, leadership isn't, you know, also taking charge and telling people what to do. It's living by example and being an inspiration and, you know, doing something to make the world a better place and, you know, take that step up within your own self to become a better person. That to me is like true leadership and sovereignty, spiritual sovereignty, you know, respecting our differences, whatever they are, so that we can live in mutual love and respect and, you know, treat each other in kindness and just live in high integrity. I mean, that to me, that's what it comes down to. So I did see that as well with certain types of, you know, Trump supporters and the way maybe people gravitated towards the letter in the alphabet that we all know. But that's just a small number. And like I said before, those kind of people might be the same kind of people that worship celebrities or that worship bands or travel and follow them everywhere and wear all their, you know, gear, you know, like, and that's fine. That's just certain people's personalities. They get so excited about something that it literally takes over their identity. But many of those type of people get really passionate and they're part of it. Other people might just sit back and expect them to do it for them. So each person, we all are tested on a daily level. How are we handling these fires? What are we standing up for? Are we going to compromise ourselves just to have certain things that we want to have or that we miss in society? Are we willing to compromise ourselves without really educating ourselves or having discernment about what actually we're actually doing? You know, we're all, you know, kind of different. And that's why I can't stand about how people are lumped into a category. And I don't want to do that with anybody. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you align with the right or left. And to me, it's not about right or left. It goes way beyond that. And both sides have been, you know, owned and infiltrated to keep us in this conquer and divide. And so, yeah, maybe this last administration was a bit different, but what if it's not? What if it's the next level of trickery and that next level of, you know, being a test? And there's probably a mixed bag of a lot of all of it. Really depends on us and each of us as individuals to just, you know, keep ourselves in check. You know, it's the intent. I mean, if people really understood why people are supporting this, it's not going to be the projection that we see in the news as what these kind of individuals have been cast as. But maybe some of them, I mean, and that's the deal. It's like you can go to a concert and maybe everybody likes a particular band, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be a small group that might be, you know, doing drugs or mistreating one another or stealing things out of a person's tent at night. I mean, but they might, you know, it's like you can't generalize these things. And the digression is amazing to me, but this is what's being targeted, the personality matrix, so that we don't move into the soul matrix. And so it's the way psychological operations work, and why, you know, they can get people all riled up, people that haven't really done the inner work, people that have been indoctrinated in the school systems, that are like holding way too much of an identity with their degrees and certifications and the things that prop them up as, you know, being successful or being you know, intelligent. They're not willing to sort of humble themselves enough to look at something that is critical to look at right now. I mean, our humanity's at stake. I mean,
so we're seeing this bifurcation right now happening in hyperspeed, these two very polarizing realities. I mean, there's more realities than just two, obviously, but we have these two very polarizing pieces existing in the same space. How do you see these two realities evolving, because in my opinion, there's almost got to be a breaking point. I mean, do you think we'll collectively experience some sort of new world order agenda play out, or is there like a melding, or how do you see these two polarities playing out?
It's been playing out. I mean, it's like there's been a grooming process, especially since 1947, Project Paperclip, Project Mockingbird, a lot of the MK Ultra projects, secret space programs, super soldier, all these things that we haven't heard about that have been going on behind the scenes, preparing the grounds for what we're seeing in the here and now. Things connected to, Agenda 2030, the funding of the Wuhan lab and the individuals behind kind of like putting the pieces in place in order to roll this out and kind of like trap people at every turn so that they pretty much have to compromise or they're manipulating them into compromising in order to keep their job, to be able to put their kids in school, to be able to even travel and go grocery shopping. So this was in the works for a long time, and it's rolling out right now. And to me, it's like a showdown of forces that we're trying to mitigate the damages of it. We're trying to help people to understand how they're being fooled and played, so that they don't stay stuck in that web and that net, because it only seeks to enslave a person in a much greater way, to the point of separating the soul matrix from the physical vessel, which the jab has the potential of doing, and the chip and all these other things that are a part of that greater plan. So trying to share as much information as possible, also to inspire people to understand what our human potential is and what is available for us to step into that has to do with us, and what this ascension window is really about, and what it represents as far as our capacity to transcend the matrix and move into better territory. We're still kind of in that place where that's a bit melded through social media, through just, still being in touch with friends and family. But there's a major, major split taking place as far as what seems to be the major split. I'm not saying it's the most dominant necessarily, but those who've gotten the jab and those who haven't. Until we really, really understand what the ramifications are, I think people are really starting to distance themselves. The ones who got the jab want to distance themselves from the ones that haven't, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. The dangers of those who have gotten the jab and what we're hearing about as far as the shedding and the prions and the spike proteins and how they can land on those that haven't gotten the jab and make them very sick. We've already seen cases and indications of it, even in our own family, when we went traveling, of symptoms that are so unusual, for a particular loved one of mine, that it's like, okay, wow, now we have to like rethink how we're gonna, function. I mean, we're very prepared as far as, having a lot of resources and supplies, but, the thought of like being concerned about being around a lot of people, not knowing, who we can stand close to and who not, and what the ramifications are if they get too close. I mean, our health is at stake. And it's not like it's a bifurcation of judgment, like, oh, well, you're stupid and you're a sheeple. And, I feel for these people, and the fact that they didn't get the information, or they're so afraid, or they just were rushed into it or pushed into it without being able to really, really think hard or spend a little bit more time on it. I mean, even though we've tried to warn them for a really, really long time, which is the sad part, the division is basically for our self-preservation and health and livelihood, not hate or judgment. So there's still love, there's still connection, but it's going to have to be like from afar, like telepathic, like soul to soul, like, and it's going to be hard to witness what might take place for those that did get the jab. But I know that there are solutions and cures and all sorts of things that if a person realizes the error that they made or doesn't feel comfortable about that decision, there will be ways to, mitigate the damages. And I'm working as much as I can with different, companies and individuals that have their hands on that kind of stuff. High level sort of technologies, even the Rasha, Dr. Jerry, I'll be interviewing soon, and he's got a whole other, kind of, technology that I'll be interviewing him soon, and I'll, kind of ask about, because I haven't talked to him since all this kind of happened. So that to me is like the dividing line that, people are going to start to just kind of flock to like-minded groups in their local areas. They might end up moving, to be around a, conscious community or people that have made the same decisions they've made, because in that everybody can kind of feel safe with each other. And it might mean we can't allow those who've been vaxxed in, and maybe the ones that have had the jab are going to do the same thing. So that's going to create a bit of a divide to the point where we're going to be experiencing a completely different reality. And I'm not saying that the ones that got the jab, it's all going to be terrible and doom and gloom, but they're going to be presented with challenges that are different than the ones that decided not to do that are going to be facing. And those challenges could be just being harassed, censored, so that's kind of the divide. And, we're going to have to just find ways to protect ourselves and really come down to the practicalities of it all. What do we need to do to defend ourselves? What sort of setup do we need to have? And how can we work with people in our local community, including sheriffs, including people that hold different positions in societies, maybe the doctors and teachers that see what's going on and don't like it either, that can pull together and create a powerful presence and force within the community or town or cities. So I think it's very important that, we just sort of get to know who's who, find those that are like-minded, and begin to, build, strength in those numbers. And yes, it's creating a division that's very awkward and uncomfortable, because the well-intentioned people that got the jab thought they were doing it so that they could protect others. And then all of a sudden realizing, wow, people are actually treating me like I'm a threat. Well, it's very unfortunate. To be duped and manipulated and lied to on this level is such an unbelievable crime that I don't feel it's all doom or gloom or irreversible like people are saying. I feel like they still have a connection with God's source, because their intent was not malice. It wasn't that they're a part of it. They're not coming from a place of, darkness. Maybe, this trickery, there's got to be some kind of correction from a larger, bigger, place in order to, help these souls overcome an error in judgment, simply because they were convinced it was a good idea, and at the time their heart was in the right place. And to me, there's plenty of room for correction with that. And spirit is the override frequency that can heal anything. To me, the dark technologies and things that are evil are not the irreversible things. So I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be helping individuals that want to correct those mistakes, and some are probably and they might have to arm themselves to protect themselves from any kind of harassment or invasion. But it's going to be crazy. So that to me is the first stage of this bifurcation, and the split in sort of timelines. And the one timeline is kind of putting people in reversals and taking people into the past and past traumas and sort of playing on fears. Whereas the other one is, all right, let's boldly move forward and trust something that relates to spirit and this earth and our connection with our own divine blueprint and the things that we've learned and have, gotten in touch with that, will help us to, advance ourselves. And maybe, there'll be some sort of link where, we'll end up being sort of the spirit guides of the ones that are like, what have I done? Get me out of this. And it seems like that happens a lot throughout our human, ancient, and galactic history, that there's, some sort of rescue mission, not to be the savior, but to, there is that level of assistance. People get taken up on ships, and, there's high level technologies that can, undo things, even help people to get a new physical vessel. The beings of Venus, have a database supposedly of our DNA and are able to give us back our original blueprint if we get super damaged. But we have to cultivate some sort of connection and really do the inner work on ourselves to be able to reach those kind of dimensional levels for that level of assistance, I feel.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you kind of just answered my next question, but I'll repeat it just more for like a 3D level here. What advice would you give to healers, to counselors, to light worker type individuals who are working with folks who may have very, very polarizing belief systems? I have a very close friend of mine who is very against the and she finds it very difficult to spiritually work with these folks because it's so different, and they're supposedly spiritual, but they're so for this other path. So what would you give, what could you say to folks that are just having a really hard time working with these people?
Well, there might just have to be a dividing line, as awkward as it is. We're kind of running into that where a family wants to visit, and we might have to say we just can't do this at this time, and explain reasons that aren't going to be too devastating or difficult for them to process. So there's got to be a way that one can word things and create the boundary that's necessary. Maybe things like, there's not enough known about what this all means right now, and maybe the healer person might say to the person that made that decision, right now I'm not feeling safe, I'm processing a lot, and right now I'm determining where I need boundaries until I have greater clarity. Please don't take it personally, and it's just like explaining that there's an inner process going on regardless of what choices we're making, and it makes it very, very hard to be able to have a relationship, when two very, very strong decisions about something that is going to change the course of our life forever is very hard in these early stages to create dialogue about, and there's just a need for boundary right now. So I think moving into maybe more sort of remote healing or online stuff, maybe writing more articles, maybe doing videos of like sound healing or things that can be a resource for people, whether you took the thing or not, that, you can utilize maybe the internet a little bit more, or a different way to reach people. And as far as the one-on-ones, you can be very, very discerning about the people that you want in your space. So if you need to like have a little form that people fill out, to accept whether or not you want to work with them, it can be a ton of questions. Did you get the jab? What's your blah, blah, blah. And maybe some sort of like write-up that doesn't sound like it's going to like be hurtful, but something that's like appropriate and understanding that anybody could say, okay, well, that makes sense. I can understand, just like with any place, we reserve the right to not serve a particular customer for whatever reason. And if they don't like it, that's a part of the greater choice that they made. Mm-hmm. We can't put our life on the line just to, be a loving person. I mean, we can't put ourselves on the line because, being a healer means that we have to put ourselves in harm's way. So people are going to have to like restructure the way they, do things. And we certainly are, as far as just the way we're going to interact with society ourselves. And the refusal to travel anymore is one of it. And so, yeah, I think people that are, in that position, there's ways to word it without kind of shaming a person or causing them fear because of the decisions they made. It's sort of like, right. Until I have more of an idea of what this all means, seeing and hearing about these different stories, I don't feel safe right now, or something like that. And yeah, time will tell. For all we know, there's going to be more disclosures of sort of, greater, technologies or, things that can really help us to all be able to still, work together in some sort of way. I'm going to find out about one today. And it might actually be able to reverse some of the damages. But people need to just like really process what choices that they've made and accept that, life is not going to be the same, and that we're not all going to be able to interact for a time until we know more, and until there's ways that we can feel, protected, mm-hmm. that have been, proven that, okay, well, that was initially the problem, and now we've been able to, deal with it, and this particular thing, will help. I mean, there's educating oneself. It's like, I know all the different herbs and supplements that can dissolve clots, but, until that becomes louder and more available to people, yeah, I mean, really, we're all like putting each other at risk right now. And so it's like a need to take a step back and reevaluate.
So as you know, I'm big into sound therapy and DNA activations. And we know this, we know a little bit about this vaccine, right? How do you think that is actually interfering with the DNA activations happening in the collective now? And is that impeding on it? Is it changing it in some way? Is it a blockage? And of course, consciousness overrides all, but from a three-dimensional level, how, or do we just kind of have to wait to see how it's going to play out?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different explanations of what this mRNA represents. I don't think I can like verbatim like say it as clearly as what I've heard, but it is all about genetic modification and about like a synthetic version of this mRNA that creates sort of a link into artificial intelligence, and somehow it just breaks down the immune system to the point where you have to continue to take the jab and almost like rely on this greater sort of network, like, because it's like an operating system, right? So it's like linking to something else that literally you become or begin to get morphed into, that you can't really exist without. But it also has the power to target and wipe out a huge number of people. And not everybody has the same sort of, blood types or DNA, the genetics aren't all going to be the same. So, there is a culling and a depopulation aspect to it. And also genetic modification can lead to, they talk about the mad cow disease and how it breaks down things in the brain and just, the stories are pretty horrendous. But then there's also genetic modification in terms of being more hive mind and being more just, a part of this sort of enslavement without really realizing you're enslaved, because you're no longer really connected to your soul, and the soul matrix isn't able to occupy the physical vessel as easily. So the physical vessel is very vulnerable to possession and just AI takeover. So I feel spiritually strong people can probably counteract quite a bit of this. So I know it sounds kind of scary, but so when we're in a time of being able to upgrade our DNA, this is, an attempt to throw things, back into a reversal, to gain more ownership over a soul that had the opportunity to get to know itself more, and what potentials we have to not, have to go this route. And of course the fear tactics are everything. You get people to fear something, they, give their power away without realizing that, the fear of death or the fear of any of this stuff is an initiation right now to reclaim more of all that we are. And this is where the choice comes down to. In the face of this stuff, are you going to learn more about nutrition? Are you going to have a healthier lifestyle? Are you going to listen to doctors and experts and their healing protocols that will protect you from having to make that kind of choice? And are you educating yourself about what these choices are and the ramifications? People aren't taking that kind of time. So, once they allow themselves to be owned due to fear, and then they put stuff in their body to link them more and more into, that system, that level of ownership is pretty extreme. But if we look at the larger picture, there's a lot of instances in our galactic history that corrections have been made to help these genetically modified humans, get themselves back. But a lot of that looks like it's come in the form of abductions and taking genetic material and creating hybridization programs in order to get their race kind of back on track with reconnection to, the soul. And very much it's the reptilian agenda to own and enslave individuals to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do. So when you weaponize a human and they assassinate or they do something criminal and they don't even remember doing it, that's the kind of dangers. So when you look at like alters or MK Ultra projects that are to the more extreme, that's already the case. But this is a way to use humans and kind of direct their, every move and surveillance them to the point where, you can take out the ones that seem to be a threat. You can, target ones to maybe, target others that might have been implanted through an abduction or through one of these, projects, who knows? But this all has to play out to a certain degree, but something greater is rising out of it that people have not really gotten in touch with, that I like to bring a lot of attention to. Who really talks about the Christ Sophia template or the Mother Arc energy or the grid workers or the Starseed missions? There is so much more good news than we can imagine that has come to Earth during this time to help us through this very, very difficult passage, that are encoded with the instruction set coming directly from their higher self in the form of downloads that will tell them and inform them of what they need to do in order to be of service to humanity at this time, while also, protecting the self. There's going to have to be some boundaries there, of course.
So just switching a little bit here, what is your understanding or idea of the event or the solar flash? Does this bifurcation, trifurcation, is it leading up to some type of cosmic, galactic event that kind of will be apparent to everybody? Is this a prequel, or is it more of a conscious solar flash idea? How do you see that?
Yeah, you know, I used to have like dreams and visions as a kid of, you know, this incredible light coming out of the sky, activating everything. And people thought it was like a bomb, and they were running and they were scared, but it actually was something, you know, really powerful and of the light. And I mean, the thing is, the organic ascension timeline can't really be destroyed, but we can distract ourselves away from it. We can, you know, not recognize that it's there and continue to, you know, stay in the matrix net. But I mean, to me, we each have our own personal event, what one might call, oh, I had an awakening. And it's not just maybe like a one instant thing. It's maybe, you know, at different levels of our life and different levels of ourself over the course of time. You know, we could have an emotional awakening or an epiphany that helps us to, you know, feel less maybe depressed if that was an issue. You know, maybe a mental awakening where we break the mind control programs or we step out of the programming. Maybe an ego awakening where we allow our self-esteem to be aligned with our higher self rather than the society standards of what it means to be this or that. So there's many, many levels of an awakening. And I feel there are many, many levels of this greater global awakening. And when we reach a certain point, the reflection of that success or victory is going to show up in some sort of event that's like going to bring us closer to the essence of source energy, 0 point unified field, and something that will really just like, I don't know, into this earth. And I feel been activated when the sun started to move through the 13th sign of Ficus and the energies of the ether became more available. And I don't feel like necessarily it's going to be one big event or blast. It might be too much for us to be able to integrate that without it causing damage to our physical vessel. So I feel like the event has taken place, is taking place, but it's an integration process and an alchemical process that certainly doesn't happen overnight. But if there is one larger event, we will be prepared enough in our physical vessel to be able to handle it while it will wipe out a huge part of the population. But so we're seeing the jab have that potential, also like a solar event having that potential. And all I really know is that at the end of the day, you know, the dark has to sort of expire itself, not like the true organic dark, but these dark forces need to just run their course and expire themselves, and whatever casualties take place, I mean, you know, we're infinite beings, and they'll still be on their soul journey, learning and growing from the choices that they've made. But once that expires, there's something that's real behind the curtain that has been here all along that's going to make itself known. It's just this collapsing of the matrix needs to take place, or people, you know, exiting this part of their lives so that they can consistently stay in connection with source energy and earth energies to see a major upgrade happen in their physical. What happens often is people get an upgrade, but then they kind of go back to square zero because they end up interacting with society, or they end up getting targeted, or they end up, you know, maybe their relationship begins to fall apart because there's so much targeting that people forget that we're being assaulted. And it's not always something that we need to take personally, like we failed or we're defeated. And sometimes people fall into that, and it takes them a while to get back. So when, you know, there's a consistent amount of time spent away from the devices, the electronics, and the matrix energies, and we're in nature, or, you know, building community and focusing our creative energy on good things, we can start to see the results that get anchored in, and not like kind of there and then gone, where it's like a roller coaster. Like you feel exalted and aligned, and the next minute you feel like, you know, what happened? Like, and that's the case for a lot of people, where they can't seem to hold that consistency. So, I mean, that to me is also the bifurcation, that those energetic cords, or that relationship with that part of the paradigm that we need to let go of, even if we're awakened, that we need to just say, all right, we left as many resources as possible, and people can still find our resources, but it's getting harder and harder to interact with that world anymore, because it's getting way more dangerous with the mandates, with the suffocation, with the forced sort of, you can't do this unless you have that. I think we're going to see just a lot of people just exiting completely and totally, and then it'll just be its own thing and dissolve, expire, or move into a bifurcation like Phantom Earth, like where it's like its own sort of thing based in sort of AI transhumanism, and it has a life cycle connected to harvesting and siphoning technologies that literally are vamping off of, you know, souls that have lost their humanness. And yes, there are always corrections though. And I believe any good soul or person of love is not doomed if they've made these decisions and they get further immersed. I know that there's just so much to help them overcome it, but it's unbelievable to witness. when we see our friends and family moving in that direction.
I totally resonate with everything you just said. That's great. That's great. Yeah, completely agree. All right, Laura. Well, I told you 30 minutes and we've gone over that. So I'm so grateful. What a great conversation. Yeah. So I guess last words would be, ultimately, do you have any words of wisdom for folks trying to mitigate all of this energy? And, from an astrological point of view, how can we anchor in all the good stuff and usher in all these good energies?
Well, it's just really important that we just determine that we're, sovereign beings. We can connect with incredible medicines that come from the earth. There's all sorts of, benevolent, things going on, and reconnection with our galactic heritage and, other, beings. I mean, we can devote ourselves to being on a really, good path. And when we devote to like the organic ascension timeline and our own internal guidance, and we seek to strengthen our intuition, we'll be able to protect ourselves. We'll know, if it's not appropriate that we go out maybe to the store one particular day or hang out with a particular person. We have to get so in touch with ourselves that, we can build that internal guidance and learn to trust ourselves again, fall back on ourselves, and really breathe into that and connect into that, so that the synchronicities we're able to recognize that give us a life upgrade, and the things that might compromise us or put us in danger or harm's way, we feel that warning and we know to say no. And we honor that, and we stand for that. Even if it doesn't make others around us happy, that we make that the priority. And, working on building community and like-minded people, and engaging your creative energy in something that helps you to feel like, you're a part of all the ways to create improvement on the planet. I've lost a lot of my channels, but, if I can give you the link to my Telegram, and I post all sorts of articles and just advice about certain herbs and supplements, and just write-ups of astrology and all sorts of different things. So that's a great way to keep up with me. You can go to cosmicgaia.org, and you'll see the link to be able to join Telegram on the front page. And I've got online events you can see on the homepage as well. And just going to keep putting out, resources of information that hopefully will activate a person in a way that helps bring them closer to themselves. Because we each have, something to bring to the table, and we don't want to let fear make it impossible or difficult to be able to think and connect. Because as this stuff is trying to lead us down a certain direction, there's something else going on that's doing the opposite. And this is based in cosmic and natural law, and the fact that we're dealing with a benevolent universe, and God, Goddess, divine blueprint, energy source, Christ Sophia template, that only seeks to heal us, to bring about equilibrium, balance, harmony, peace, and human advancement, and just our ability to thrive and be all that we came here to be. And so we need to divorce ourselves from these imposters that want to convince us otherwise, and want us to forget that this is who we truly are, and this is what's available. And it has our back, and it loves us unconditionally. So, we need to just cultivate that relationship. Look at it like, a reunion, but a partnership that you want to cultivate, because there's so much to, connect upon, and so much to release oneself from, that put walls and barriers, between that connection. And it's a connection, though, that never abandons us. We can only forget that it exists. I mean, it's here always, and we're made of it, and it lives inside of us. So let's not distract ourselves with the rest of it, and get excited, because this is what increases the immune system. This is what helps us to connect with the abilities that transmute and alchemize these things that we might be afraid of. This is not a time for us to get sick and digress. It's the opposite. So we got to move in the direction of that flow, and anything that undermines it and tries to reverse it, we need to say no to, and just stand strong and saying no, because, as long as we don't consent, they really can't have us. It's the unconsciousness and the blindness and the fear tactics that cause people to be weakened to it. So
that's perfect. Awesome. Yeah, I resonate with that for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Laura. And, anytime you want to come on and chat, you're more than welcome. And absolutely, I'll link all of your info so people can make sure to stay in contact with you. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. It's so great to see you. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And we'll definitely be in touch and keep up all the amazing work. It's been so great to get in touch with what you do. And I know that that's a huge role to be bringing into the planet right now that helps so many people realign and activate and find their truth, the codes you carry and the beautiful sound healing. So thank you. And I love you.
Love you too. Talk
All right.
later.
Bye.